Everybody, welcome to the Wednesday Word. This is a weird one for me. It's kind of hard. Man, I've been in so much prayer, and it really is hard only because when you want to be vulnerable and honest, I learned in the past, I would make the mistake of being too honest. if if I ever, as when I was a youth pastor for 21 years and had our own church for 3 years, it was like I probably, if I made a mistake, I was too raw, like not polished enough. Like you need a little fakeness kind of thing. So if I ever erred in some way, it was typically I would err on the side of being too vulnerable, too real, or sharing too much, as opposed to, maybe most people. I don't know if it's most people. I think it probably is. As far as most pastors, I think would err more on the side of, you know, I don't know. I don't want to say fake because that's not fair to them. But maybe like guarded, or at least polished, or that kind of thing. Especially I think if you have a large church, and I am going to ramble a little only because I am still trying to figure out what exactly to say. So I just want to process something kind of out loud. I do have a word. I do have a teaching. It's in the book of Habakkuk, which I know is weird. Like, why are we talking about Habakkuk? Well, it's just where I found myself as I was praying about what to do for this Wednesday. So anyway, if you want to go ahead and like and subscribe, that helps us. And unleashministries.net, click on the give link if you want to help us monetarily, which is what I am actually struggling with how real to be about, and where we are and where I am and where the struggle has really been. And I just don't know exactly what is appropriate. So I was literally, I don't know if I have marks on my face, if you can actually see it, but I've literally been on my face for the last hour, just asking the Lord what is appropriate. Like I put together the teaching, I listened to the Lord, and then it's like, where do I go from here? I so I don't know. I'm gonna hopefully catch everybody up on where we are right now. If you don't know, if you're new to Unleashed, this wouldn't be a good place to start. Like today's teaching probably wouldn't be awesome for you. Go back, listen to happier ones from the past. But if you aren't new to Unleash and you know us, then, or if you, but again, if you are, we've started doing 3 days a week. We have Bible study Monday, Wednesday word, which is what this is, and more of a prophetic word, as opposed to Bible study, although we always get into the word, and then whatever I feel like the Lord is saying. And then Friday, we release podcasts that are typically we have guests. So my wife's been on it, we've had family on it, things like that. So anyway, I am stalling because I'm like, I just want to do the right thing. I just want to do the right thing. And I want to be real where I need to be real, but I don't want to, do things inappropriately, like share something that's not for sharing. So I'm just still now asking the Lord because I really always want to walk in His will, and that is my always motivation, is to walk in His will, and has been my motivation for almost my whole life. Well, certainly since I repented at 21 years old, or even 20 years old, but 21 for sure, repented and began to follow Him. So just so everybody knows, a quick recap. And many of you don't really know these things. And so, again, I haven't shared a lot. Before I get into the word out of Habakkuk, I wanted to share a little bit of our journey to kind of catch you up. And I almost wanted to have my wife here with me. And so, I don't know, I might even, we've probably already started. We could always splice her in later. I'll have my amazing editors do that, which is my daughter and my son. So after having been a youth pastor for 21 years, I never saw myself really doing anything except for being in the ministry. And I was in my dad's church for that whole time. And I always sort of thought I would take over my dad's church. I didn't have like an ambition to take over his church. It wasn't like this was I'm going to take over. It isn't even that I really wanted to. I just sort of saw that and thought, well, I guess that's probably what I would do. Um, just because it just sort of seemed natural, I guess. Like I'd preached a lot in my dad's church. Every time my dad was gone, I would preach, or most of the time, anyways. And I would preach and speak and minister to adults in the adult congregation, um, quite frequently. And there was a while there I did once a month, or I'd meet with a lot of people in the adult congregation, as well as ministering to youth. And I led a youth group and a young adult group simultaneously. Taught many, many times in the school. We started a brief little school there that was fun to do. And again, taught a lot of different times for the adults. And it didn't quite work out like that. That I won't go into, but it was, difficult time, very difficult decision to choose to leave New Song. At the time, it was very hard, and I didn't anticipate how hard that it would be. It was quite a bit more difficult even than I thought it would be. And it was hard to plant a church. That in itself is really stressful. If you've ever planted a church, it's really hard, mostly because of the spiritual weight that it carries, but also because you kind of put a target on your back. Like when I planted the church, there was a target on my back, and we got shot at a lot. And there was a lot of, not by our own church, of course, but there was a lot of gossip and a lot of slander and a lot of lies spoken about us. And it was hard to deal with. You even if you don't hear it, like know the specific thing, you definitely feel it. And so, that was a very difficult time for us. And then, of course, we did that for 3 years. I don't think there was any time when it was easy. There were great times that we had with God and with the people of our church. We loved our church and we loved the people, but it was quite, quite difficult, especially having the target on our back, and the things that came against us was hard. And then my dad passes away, and that was hard, obviously, in a whole nother realm. That was incredibly difficult, and to deal with that whole situation. And then it put us into kind of a tizzy. We didn't really know what to do. We felt the moving of the Lord to pick us up and move us. And I didn't want to move. Like, when you have 6 kids and you've been in Colorado for, at that time, 30 years, and my wife was born and raised and her whole family's here, and my immediate family is like, what are we doing? Like moving to North Carolina. And to do that with no income and no job and wondering how this is going to work out was really, really scary. So we did that, and that was also quite difficult. And it seemed that the same things happened. There was not the same things, but but there was still a target on our back for totally different reasons, I think. But we, again, were gossiped about a lot, slandered a lot. And most of it, again, when it got back to us, even before it got back to us, it was hurtful. When I got back to us, it was very, very hurtful. But in the midst of that, also, we're like, well, what do we do? Like, do we plant a church? Do we, what do we do? I'm a pastor. Like, how do I do this? And so we decided at that time, this is, maybe 2.5 years ago or so, that we would start an online ministry, because we're like, well, what else do we do, And so I started just giving words, like an online ministry, in the hopes and the prayer that it would grow, in the hopes and in the prayer that it would touch people and help people and allow us to have an income. So, so we did that. And some money came in through the ministry, but not a lot, and not enough to sustain us. And so it was always kind of this constant worry, because I knew that I couldn't just do this alone, because of the financial aspect of it. It was weighing down on me as a father to be able, and a husband to provide for my wife and my kids. And so that was really, really difficult. And so this whole time has been really hard for us, and it may have been really hard for you for the same reasons or for different reasons. And on top of that, in the spirit has been quite difficult, because of all the things that all of you are going through. There's this awakening of the heart. There's this hunger for more. There's this, I can't seem to find a home church. I don't seem to really fit in anywhere. And you're trying really hard, and it isn't, maybe some people, I blame the church or the people. I don't do that. I blame myself. Like, I don't know why we can't seem to fit in. But there's this turmoil. And that was one of the reasons we started the channel too, was to try to speak to that and speak to the people who maybe don't fit in and aren't plugging in and needed maybe a voice to kind of help them process what they're going through. And so that's what we tried to do. And so I released the word all throughout the week. Various people would contact me just for ministry. So I became kind of an online pastor. People would reach out for dream interpretation, for prayer, for counseling. You name it, I've been doing that in addition to the word. But again, it was always very scary because we never had enough money coming in and too much money going out. And I just prayed and trusted the Lord that he would grow it. Now, partly because of the gossip and slander in North Carolina, that really hurt people coming to our ministry because of the things that were said specifically about me. So it's been hard. And I get this now. Not that I didn't really get it before, but I really get it now. When people say, uh, you know, the enemy wants to shut down prophetic voices. He wants to, quiet the truth from coming. I always hesitated to kind of posit myself as that guy because I never wanted to sound like, well, I'm the guy with the answers, so of course the enemy's after me. It sounds arrogant to say that, and so I never really went there. But I'm going there because this is where we find ourselves right now. And so this whole time, just trusting the Lord and believing for growth. The growth has not happened. The increase in the ministry has not happened. And the finances have not happened. And so we are at a crossroads. So we are really at a place now where we cannot go on. And so before I get into the details of that, uh, I wanted to give you the word that I had. And again, I will never stop trusting the Lord, no matter what. And if you are in a hard season, if this is a very difficult time for you, I want to let you know you're not alone. I'm right there with you. This has been the most difficult time of my life. Really, the last 5 years have been the hardest time of my life by far. And many of you don't know this. I ended up in the emergency room a couple of times as a result of witchcraft. As a result, like I know you guys don't even know, I haven't shared that much about this, but it was absolutely the result of that. I was having panic attacks multiple times a day. I had panic attacks for over a year and a half every single day. And it got so bad that I ended up in the emergency room. I ended up crying in front of this poor doctor's looking at me and I'm just bawling my eyes out. And, she's like, kind of looking at me like, well, what do you want me to do? And I was like, just give me drugs. I just wanted something to help stop this. I'm begging her for drugs. She eventually gives me the drugs, which, by the way, I never took the drugs. Just having some kind of hope like that I could escape it was enough during that time to get me through that time. So I never took any medication, even though I was tempted to. I'm not against taking medication, but I was trying not to. And so I never did. But it was quite difficult to have panic attacks and this whole thing coming from witchcraft and from confusion. And when you're used to being in a pastoral position in a church and you're just loving people and you have a specific thing you're doing and you know what you're doing and you're good at what you're doing, it's a great feeling. It's a great place to feel like you're in your place. It's a great place to feel like you're doing what you're for. And I actually saw this study recently that said people who are the happiest and have the least amount of stress, uh, are people who feel like they're doing what they're for. And I completely understand that. I honestly, to be honest with you, and again, I'm going to be as transparent as I feel like is okay in the Lord. I just pray a lot and pray God will sanctify if I do wrong. But that I've not felt like I was doing what I'm for probably for at least 5 years or 6 years, maybe. I would say even 6 years or seven. I've not really felt like I was doing what I was for. But certainly when I left ministry in terms of locally, being a local pastor and leading worship and teaching in front of actual people and, trying to pastor people, I've just felt completely weird, just like totally out of place. Like I'm not doing what I'm for. Bringing these words forth, doing the online stuff I feel like it's something that I'm for, but it doesn't feel like, I would say it feels like 1% of what I'm actually called to do and what I'm for. And I don't know how many of you have felt that. And I think a lot of this time period that we've been going through is very much that. It's like, God, what am I for? And I think a lot of the exposure and the crazy, the tumultuousness of this last 5 years, the change, it's been like, what do I believe? And for most of us, it hasn't been like, I don't believe in God, or I'm deconstructing. I have a whole podcast on that with Ladder, but falling away from the faith. It's more like I had to re-examine. We've been re-examining what we've built our faith upon. Like, how have we viewed God? What have we really believed about God? What have we believed about ourselves? What have we thought about the church? It's like all of these sort of core things, foundational things for many of us, even if in your 20s, or some of you are in your 60s and 70s, have done the same thing in the last 6-7 years. It's really interesting because I counsel a lot of people, and I counsel people in their 20s doing this, and I've counseled people in their 70s doing this. So it's really interesting to see it's not generationally specific. It's like this upheaval of, what do I actually believe about God? What do I believe about the church? What do I believe about myself? And what do I believe about other people? And who do I believe God to be? And all of these kinds of core foundational things in the life of a believer. What do I believe about prayer? What do I believe about fasting? What if I believe the Bible's actually said that maybe it doesn't say? Or, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, this has been big deal for myself, for lots of people. And I've felt like my main call these last 5 years or so has been to help people through that, has been to give people language, because God has been downloading, like, he's never stopped speaking to me. He's never stopped downloading revelation to me. I've never stopped having prophetic encounters and experiences, many of which I've shared. I just shared one last week, many of which I've shared here. And I have felt like this has, been the venue to bring forth things that I felt would help people that are either have been or are still in this process of upheaval and change. And I've wanted to bring that forth. But I've hit a roadblock in the financial realm, and I'm not sure where to go from here. And I'm trusting the Lord, and I don't know how, again, vulnerable I want to be, other than I want to show you the book of Habakkuk, because this is where the Lord led me. And I wanted you to see his process, because at the end, I'm choosing to go with what Habakkuk did. And I'm going to encourage you to do the same. I'm going to encourage you to go the route of Habakkuk by the end of this book. It's only 3 chapters. It's a short little thing. And I'm just going to give a brief, like in this Bible, it's literally 2 pages. Like, it's very short. I'm not going to read every word, but I want to give you an idea of what Habakkuk was going through. And it's very similar to what I'm going through, and it may be similar to what you're going through. Now, you may not have reached a crossroads, but maybe you have. Maybe you've reached a crossroads in the spirit. Maybe it's not financial. Like in our case, it's financial. Like, we have to do something financially in order to be able to be okay. But maybe with you, maybe it's not financial. Maybe it's relational. Maybe it's spiritual. Maybe it's with your job. But maybe you have reached a point where you're still at that crossroads. Like, it's coming to a head. Like, all of this stuff, these last 5, 6, 10 years, whatever it has been for you, is kind of coming to a head. And you feel like, even if you don't, it's like, it's gonna break. It like has to break. Like, this is the time that it has to break. And this is kind of what happened to Habakkuk. He hit this point, and he has this conversation with God. And Habakkuk is a really funny book, like, in the sense that most of the other prophets, not all of them, but especially we call the major prophets, like Jeremiah and Isaiah, they are just like speaking to the people for the most part, especially Jeremiah and Isaiah, because they're warning them to repent so they don't have to get invaded by Babylon. So they're usually yelling at the people, like, repent, guys, stop being idolatrous idiots, this kind of a thing. But Habakkuk doesn't do that. He actually has this conversation with God, kind of like Job. Like, Habakkuk goes, God, blah, 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 blah. And God goes, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, but this, so they have like this conversation back and forth. And it's kind of where I felt myself having this conversation. And I don't know where this is going. I don't know how we're going to get out of this situation that we're in. I don't know how much I'll explain to you. I'm hoping that I'll have enough time, which it looks like if we don't have a miracle, I'll end up having to work a lot of hours in a different job. And I don't know if I'll have enough time to do everything we're doing now. I probably won't. But I don't know. I'm just going to trust the Lord and pray. But I also don't want to well, I just want to be obedient to the Lord, but I want to love my kids and wife, and you're juggling things that are difficult, and so I don't know. Anyway, before I say anything more into that realm, I'm going to start with Habakkuk. So, if you don't know about Habakkuk, what's happening is the people in Israel are acting horribly, right? They're just not good. Like the state of Israel is very, very bad. Kind of like the state of the church right now and the things that we're seeing in the body of Christ. And so basically Habakkuk comes out and he basically just tells God that he's been crying out to God. He's like, are you listening to me? Like, things are bad. I don't know what to do. Like, people are going crazy. And clearly Habakkuk, and he says that he's been crying out to God, and then God answers him. But let me give you the cry of Habakkuk's heart. He says this is Habakkuk 1 verse 2. How long, O Lord, will I call for help and you will not hear? So he's been calling on God to help him and help Israel in this hour because things are just not great. He says, I cry out to you, violence, yet you do not save. Why do you make me see iniquity and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists and contention exists. Therefore the law is ignored, and justice is never upheld. For the wicked surround the righteous. Does that sound familiar to some of you? The wicked surround the righteous. Therefore, justice comes out perverted. So, Habakkuk here is going like, look, God, you're making me look upon this stuff. Righteousness is not upheld. Israelites are not doing well. He's like, the wicked are way more numerous than the righteous. They're surrounding the righteous. And he's like, what are you going to do about it? Essentially. And so God's response is interesting. And so verses 1 through 4 are Habakkuk's plea. And then verses 5 through 11 are God's response. And I'll just read a little bit of it and I'll explain to you what this is. So God responds to Habakkuk and says, verse 5, look among the nations, O serve, be astonished, wonder, because I am doing something in your days. You would not believe if you were told. So God basically is like, I am responding to this. I am doing something in regards to this big problem that you have, this feeling, this crushing thing you're experiencing. He's like, but you know what? You wouldn't actually believe me if I told you. And then he begins to tell him. Verse 6, for behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans. Now, the Chaldeans are the Babylonians. It's another name for Babylon. So he says, I'm raising up the Babylonians or the Chaldeans, that fierce and impetuous people who march throughout the earth to seize the dwelling places which are not theirs. They are dreaded and feared. Their justice and authority originate with themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards and keener than wolves in the evening. Their horsemen come galloping. Their horsemen come from afar. And he talks about how violent they are. And he goes on and talks about that kind of stuff. And, Habakkuk is sitting there like, wait, what? He goes, Lord, I just talked to you about this huge problem I have. Like, I just talked to you about my heart. I just talked to you about, I'm looking at all this bad stuff and I want you to do something about it. And he's like, basically, his response is, I don't really like this plan. Habakkuk is like, wait a minute, you're saying that you're going to send the Babylonians? Like, you're telling me that these psychos that make their own justice and, are impetuous and are crazy, like you're going to send these people? Like, these people are evil and mean. And essentially that is what Habakkuk's response is in verse 12. He says this, are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We will not die. You, O Lord, have appointed them to judge, and you, O Rock, have established them to correct. Your eyes are too pure to approve evil. See, what Habakkuk is saying is like, you can't use these people. Like, I get that there's a problem here, but this is not the answer. Like, he's like, these people are not the right choice. Like, this is a bad plan. Like, you need a better plan because these people are crazy. He's like, you can't use them. He's like, they're more evil than us. Like, that's about what he's about ready to say. He's like, and you cannot look on wickedness with favor in verse 13. Why do you look with favor on those who deal treacherously? Why are you silent when the wicked swallow up? So in other words, he basically just goes on to say, essentially like, what's your deal? Like, I don't like this plan at all. Like, these people are horrible. They're awful. They're idolatrous. Like I get that there's an issue here, but this isn't the way to solve it. Is basically what Habakkuk is telling God. And so they have this really funny, maybe it's not funny because it's too real to me right now, this conversation of like, Lord, I have this problem and I need to feed my family and I don't like your answer, or I don't even know what your answer is. But if you're there in this place of what is happening right now, like, how am I dealing with this? This is how, well, let me just get, I'm going through the process. I believe many of you have gone through or are still going through the process, and we're going to get to the end of it. And the end of it, I'm simply choosing what Habakkuk chose, and I'm going to ask you and say, you need to choose this too, because it's just the only thing we can choose in this hour. There is no other choice for the believer. And but also to know your feelings are not invalid, but there still needs to be an end to them in the sense of what I'm going for now. So anyway, okay, so that's basically Habakkuk chapter 1. Again, we're going to go through the whole thing briefly just so you can understand what's happening before we get to the point, which is the end. So Habakkuk chapter 2, basically what you have is this. Habakkuk makes his case, right? So he goes, help us, God. God goes, I will, by sending a bunch of psychopaths to kill you. Habakkuk goes, I don't like that plan. That's a bad idea. And so then verse 2, Habakkuk says, I will stand on my guard post and station myself on the rampart, and I will keep watch to see and what he will speak to me and how I may reply when I am reproved. So in other words, he's like, okay, I just laid all this stuff out telling God he shouldn't do what he said he's going to do. And he's like, so I'm going to sit there. I'm going to listen. I'm going to be on the guard post. I'm going to be right there listening to what he's going to say because he's going to rebuke me. Basically, is what he says. I'm going to listen when I am corrected because clearly I can't be right because this is God. So, but I'm going to listen really carefully because I'm probably going to be rebuked for my attitude and what I said, but at the same time, I don't understand why God would use psychopathic, bloodthirsty insanos in order to kill everybody. Like, that doesn't make good sense to me. So he's like, he goes, so he rebukes God and goes, that's not a good plan. And he goes, okay, I'm going to stand here and listen for God to correct me. Essentially, is what he says. And that's basically exactly what happens. So God comes back with this answer to Habakkuk's, objection to this whole idea of you can't use these crazy people who are more evil than Israel to correct Israel. And God, and he goes, I'll stand here and listen to be corrected. And sure enough, God comes and corrects him, or at least explains to him sort of. Well, not even. He just basically says, here's what you need to do, Habakkuk. And this is chapter 2, verse 2. Then the Lord answered me and said, record the vision and inscribe it on the tablets, that the one who reads it may run. For the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hastens towards the goal, and it will not fail. Though it tarries, wait for it, for it will certainly come. It will not delay. Behold, as for the proud one, his soul is not right within him, but the righteous will live by his faith. Furthermore, wine betrays the haughty man, so that he does not stay at home. He enlarges his appetite like Sheol, and he is like death, never satisfied. He also gathers to himself all the nations and collects to himself all the peoples. So basically, if I were to sum this up, he basically says, look, just trust me. He's like the faithful man, just have faith. He's like, look, don't be arrogant, just trust me. I mean, that's how I would sum that whole thing up. And then for a long time, verses 6 through 20, basically God goes, look, just trust me. I know what I'm doing. It's going to be okay. And he goes, don't worry. Babylon's going down. Like, they're not going to stay there forever. They ended up being there for 70 years, which, that's a long time for us. But for God, even for them, wasn't. I mean, it must have been a horrible long time to them. But in the grand scheme of the universe, it wasn't that long. So, but he spends the next verses 6 through 20 essentially describing how horrible they are and that they're going down. He's like, don't worry about it. I'm going to make sure that I remember their violence. I remember their looting. I remember that they're bloodthirsty psychopaths. Don't worry about it. I got it. And you just need to trust me. So that essentially would sum up chapter 2. So getting on to chapter 3, which is really where I wanted to go, at least the last part of chapter 3, essentially what you have is this. Verses 1 and 2 say this, a prayer of Habakkuk the prophet, according to Shigionoth. Lord, I have heard the report about you, and I fear. O Lord, revive your work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. Basically what he's saying is this. I've I've understood as much as I'm going to understand, and I'm choosing to trust you. And he's just simply saying, in your wrath, in this judgment that's coming, he says, just remember to be merciful. He's like, I don't understand everything, but I'm choosing to trust you. That's why he says about I fear. That's like a trust in the Lord. And he says, revive your work in the midst of the years. In other words, like even in the middle of this stuff, make sure you're at work, but I trust you. That's what he's saying essentially. So that's his first thing that he says. And then verse 2, he just begins to remember what God has done. He says this, God comes from verse 3, God comes from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. His splendor covers the heavens. The earth is full of his praise. His radiance is like the sunlight. He has rays flashing from his hands. And there is the hiding of his power. Before him goes pestilence, and plague comes after him. He stood and surveyed the earth. He looked and startled the nations. Well, what is he talking about? He's talking about them being delivered from Egypt. So he's going all the way back and remembering, like, I remember how great and glorious you are. I remember how you shook the heavens and the earth. I remember how you freed my people from Egypt. I remember when you moved. And that's what he's doing. He basically says, I don't understand, but I'm going to trust you. And then he goes, and I remember who you are. I remember what you've done. And he recounts in detail the stuff that the Lord did. You know, he goes on and talks about your chariots of salvation. You cleave the earth with rivers. In verse 9, he's like, verse 10, the mountains saw you and quaked. The downpour of the water swept by. And so on. He just goes on. In verse 13, he says, you went forth for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed. You struck the head of the house of evil to lay him open from thigh to neck. And once again, he's talking about delivering them from Egypt. And then he's talking about, he goes into their conquest of Canaan, or the conquest of Israel, is what was called Canaan at the time before they invaded, because that's where the Canaanites were. And he talks about God being with them, with Joshua, when they went in and conquered. That's what he's referring to. So just so you know, he's recounting how God has moved. He's recounting the things God has done. And then he ends it with this, and this is the part that really stabbed me through the heart, and maybe it'll stab you through the heart too. But the end is verse 17 through 19, and here's what he says. Though the fig tree should not blossom, and there be no fruit on the vines, though the yield of the olive should fail. And I'm almost tearing up over this because this is where I'm at. And the fields produce no food. Though the flock should be cut off from the fold, and there be no cattle in the stalls. So what he's saying is this: even if I have no provision, even if I have no food, like the fig tree doesn't blossom, was what he means by that. There's no fruit on the vines. What he's saying is there's no food and there's nothing to drink, which he means by they would make wine, right? So he says, though the yield of the olive should fail. This is how we we also eat it. We use it as oil for cooking and all kinds of things. And the fields produce no food. He's like, I don't have any money. I don't have any food. I don't have anything to drink. This is what he's saying. He's saying, even if that happens, though the flock should be cut off from the field and there be no cattle in the stalls, right? So we have no meat. We have no veggies. We have nothing. He says this in verse 8. And this is where I want to come and bring it home. Yet I will exult in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. The Lord God is my strength, and he has made my feet like hinds' feet. Now that means my feet are sure. Like hinds' feet is a metaphor for them jumping, and they're very sure. They know exactly where they're going and exactly where they land, and they're happy. It makes me walk on my high places. I'm going to read that one more time. Basically says, even though I have nothing, he says, I will exult in the Lord. I will rejoice. Exult means, if you don't know what that means, it means literally like be openly happy about, be to praise, to laugh, to have joy, to just completely erupt in dancing and love and praise to the Lord. He said, that's what I will do. And I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. In fact, some translations translate it, yet I will rejoice in the Lord and rejoice in the God of my... They're not the same word, but they will oftentimes translate them the same because they kind of mean the same thing, which is, of course, this is a poem, so that's what he's doing. The Lord God is my strength. He's made my feet like hinds' feet. But I want to read this again. Yet I will exult in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. And I wrote these things down as a result of this. I was listening to this and I'm like, so now what, Lord? So now what? Well, you see how the process of this goes. I have 3 points to this. The first thing was rebuke me where I need to be rebuked. Because that's what, basically Habakkuk did. He put himself out there. He's like, I'm listening to you, Lord. Reprove me. Like, tell me where I'm off. Tell me where where I'm going this way. I need to go this way. Get me back on track. Like, that's what I want to be. So that's the first thing. Number two, trust God that justice will come, which is exactly what God was saying to him. Trust me. Justice is coming. Trust me. The wrong will be made right. And then number three, remember what God has done. And this is what I would encourage you guys to do. Actually list these things out. Remember what he's done. Write them out. Talk about them. Get details of them. Because in this hour, you must focus on the victories of the past so you remember who he is. You have to remember who he is. And I just want to tell you right now, this is a struggle for me right now. This is where I am. It's like God led me to this. I figure I'd bring it forth for any of the. Now, maybe some of you aren't struggling at all. Maybe you're in an amazing season of blessing and breakthrough. Maybe you're in that time of glory and you stepped into your purpose and out of your pain. And I pray that's the case. And if that's you watching this and you're just going like, I have no clue how to relate to this, I love that you can't relate to this. Like, that's great. Keep going. Keep going up. Don't look back. Don't try and find a struggle just so you can struggle, because trust me, there'll be plenty of real ones. Just keep going. Don't look back. Like, soar with him and don't let your feet touch the ground. But if any of you are like me, and this has been such a struggle and it has come to a head for you, because it's come in a very real and practical way. It's come to a head for us. And look, I understand we're an online ministry. I don't run a church anymore as far as like a local church. People give more money to their local church, to support the building, to support maybe if they have a staff, to support the pastor, because they want, this is their home. They go to it. I understand that's people's priority, and it should be. And I understand that most online ministries don't make very much money that they're able to actually live off of. And that's us too. We haven't made very much money, and we're trying our best to put stuff out there and trust the Lord. And if the Lord, we're trying to even do something local, but we need money for that too. So all I'm saying to you is this: we're at a crossroads. I'm not going to give you any more details than that, other than we need the favor of the Lord. Without it, we're going to have to do something else. And I will work hard to make sure that Unleash still puts out everything we can. And I'm going to trust that we'll be able to do everything, but I will have a lot less time to do so. And I just need your prayers. I need support. And, I really need prayer through this time. And I want you to know that no matter what, I will exult in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation, no matter what. This is who I am. This is who we are. If you are part of Unleashed, this is who you are. You will exult in the Lord. You will rejoice in the God of your salvation. This is who you are. And don't ever forget that it's okay to go through the hurt. It's okay to go through the pain. It's okay to wonder, to question, to do what Habakkuk did, and to come back at God and go, I don't like this idea. Like, I don't like this plan. This seems like a bad plan. and then listen to the Lord for where you're off, and then listen to him to correct you. And then go back to like, I will trust in the Lord. I will trust in the Lord. And then even if nothing works, if nothing in the natural is happening, if nothing seems to make sense, if everything's confusion, if everything is just desperation and everything is just, what do I do? Yet I will exult in the Lord my God. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. And that is, I'm just praying and calling on everyone just to go there. Like, no matter what, this is the God of my salvation. And I want to be honest with you. Mindy and I are hurting. We're confused. We don't know what our next step is. We don't have clear direction. It's weird because like I have clear direction about God's heart and who he is. And when I speak over someone or minister to someone, it's so clear to me. He speaks to me about people. And I just love people. So I love you guys so much. But Mindy and I are at a crossroads and we're hurting and we need prayer. And, we need a financial miracle. in order to keep going at least the same way we've been going and to increase what we're doing. So if you can give, that would be great. If you can't, I completely understand. Like Mindy and I can't give much now either. You know, we give a little, but we don't give a lot. We give as much as we feel like the Lord leads us to do, and that's all we do. and so I understand that. I completely get it. But just if please pray for us, like lift us up in this hour because we need it. Our family needs it. We need direction, clarity, and breakthrough. And I'm praying and believing it will happen. And so I'm asking all of you to help and pray for us who are our family, the Unleashed family. Some of you know us really well. Some of you don't know us very well. But we believe that I still believe I'm called to full-time ministry, to called to do this full-time. And I believe that I've literally done it for almost 27 years. And if I can't, then I can't. If that doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But I will exalt in the Lord my God, no matter what. I'm going to bring it forth, no matter what. And I think that was okay. I believe that was appropriate. I don't feel a check in my spirit. I'm just going to pray now. I'd ask you to pray with me. I ask that you pray how God would lead you and rejoice in the God of our salvation. No matter what, I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. So let's just go ahead and pray. Father, we love you. We give you glory. And God, I pray for your hand. I pray for your mercy. Like Habakkuk prayed for your mercy. I ask for your mercy. I pray for your glory. I pray for every work of your hand to be manifest in our lives, that everyone listening here would know your face, know your hand, know your heart, and walk in your glory. I pray this would be an hour of breakthrough. And Lord, I pray that you'd strengthen every single person listening to this to exult in you, to rejoice in you, and to let that pour over them right now. And I pray for breakthrough, Lord. I pray for finances. I pray for financial breakthroughs for ourselves and for those who need it, who are listening to us right now. I just thank you and I praise you, and we love you in Jesus' name. All right, guys, we have the podcast hopefully set up for Friday, and we're going to trust the Lord, and we're going to exalt in him. So love you guys. I'll talk to you soon.